Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and it is time to look at every single deck that got day 2 at the Portland Regional Championships. Of course, Portland just wrapped up, and we now have every single deck that got day 2 here live on Limitless. There was 151 players in day 2, which is a pretty sick number, actually, when you consider, Kanto. And, yeah, 151 players in day 2. This was the first major tournament of 2024. And there are a lot of other big tournaments coming up later this month. We got Charlotte, we got Liverpool, there's Knoxville, which is at the beginning of February. So this tournament can set the precedent for what we're going to see in the next couple of tournaments. Of course, this was a pretty major regional with some pretty interesting results. There were some very interesting cards within day 2. A couple of VMAXs that I wouldn't have expected to get day 2. So some pretty awesome stuff got day 2. And I'm excited to look at every single list here. I'll leave a link down below to Limitless if you want to go check out the list yourself. If you want to build any specific list yourself, leave a link to it in the description. And you can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It'd be appreciated. You can leave a like on the video if you go on to enjoy. But with that all the way, let's look at every deck. So the winning deck, of course, was Giratina. We saw John Ang win his first regional with the Giratina deck, which, I mean, Giratina was pretty primed to win this tournament. I mean, it did get second place at San Antonio. It almost could have won back-to-back regionals. But yeah, Tina, I never really considered to be the play for the tournament or the best deck, but it definitely seemed like a very well-rounded deck. Like, it doesn't seem like Tina has, like, any bad matchups, like, other than maybe Rapid Strike is your bad matchup, but, like, I do think that Tina's a very strong and solid play. It doesn't have many bad matchups. Its best matchups aren't bad. I mean, again, you're really good against Snorlax and Charizard, which are good matchups to beat. And yeah, Tina definitely is a very strong deck. Now that it won a regionals, we're definitely going to probably see a lot more Giratina going forward. And the deck definitely taking another regional, it's a big deal because Tina did win Portland last year. It was Arc Tina, not Lost Tina. But Lost Tina definitely seems very good. Again, really good Charizard matchup. Most Tina 60s are very optimal at this point because we even see Sam got second with Tina. So no matter what, we were going to see a Giratina deck win the tournament regardless of what happened. We do see Sam's list here is slightly different than John's. Like, one of the cards is that he does play a TM Devolution to make the Charizard matchup even better. And of course, we do see John's list here not playing the TM Devo. But like I said, a lot of the Tina lists right now are very optimized. I feel like we all know the ideal Tina 58 cards, 57 card list by now. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more Tina going forward, which could be a big deal for all you Zard players out there. There was, of course, a Mew in top 4 here. Maddox's top 4 Fusion Mew deck. I actually didn't think Mew was a good call for this tournament. Like, I played Mew for San Antonio, and I didn't regret it, but I didn't think Mew was going to be a great play heading into Portland, especially now that Charizard just won a major regionals, especially Fusion Mew. But Mew did actually have a decent weekend, so I was surprised to see that. But one of the things that makes Mew good is it actually has a pretty solid Giratina matchup. Or at the very least, that's what people say. People say that the Mew matchup for Tina is pretty good. And Fusion Mew was a strong deck still. I think Mew is still like a pretty well-rounded, strong deck. Obviously, Spiritomb is going to be a bit of an issue. When you're playing Fusion Mew, though, it's not as bad because at least you have the Fusion energies to fall back on. But it was cool to see Mew do well. Again, I didn't expect the deck to have that good of a weekend. I didn't think Mew was going to be that great this tournament. I would have played it had I gone to Portland, and it did do pretty good for the deck. The deck overperformed my expectations. We did see Guardian top 4. I had Guardian on my radar as like the play for the tournament, or at least the deck that could win Portland. It did still get top 4. It had a pretty good showing regardless. It did have a better performance than Charizard, but I do think that Guardy maybe underperformed slightly this weekend to how I expected. I thought it was going to maybe win the tournament, but Guardy was still a strong play for the tourney. It's got a pretty solid Zard matchup. The Tina matchup can get a little sketchy, and I think maybe that's why Guardy didn't do as well, is because there was so much Giratina that maybe Guardy just wasn't able to get over the line against Giratina. But I do think Guardy is still a very strong deck. It still seems like one of the decks that if it doesn't win a regional, people aren't going to respect it as much, or people aren't going to consider it as much, and it's going to keep kind of having these consistent placements. There was a Miraidon in top A2 here. We got Nick Moffat's Miraidon deck. And this is a very interesting list. It's playing the Path and the Judge and the Iono. So going away from the Peony build and going back to playing more draw. And this time is playing the Judge and Iono, a couple Path. Also playing EXP Share within the deck here, which is an interesting card Miraidon can play. It's another way to keep energy in play. It's actually really good when combined with Raichu, which we see Nick was playing 2 Raichu, which a lot of the time Miraidon nowadays plays 1 Raichu. But this one plays 2. And there's also a Tapu Koko EX in the deck, which if I were to play Miraidon this weekend, I most likely would have played a Koko EX. Koko is really good against Charizard because Charizard doesn't usually play Switch, especially if a lot of people just net decked Azul's list from San Antonio. They're not going to play a Switch. I know Azul played a Switch in his list this time around, but a lot of the players probably who play Charizard were probably not playing a Switch. And Koko is a great way to deal with Charizard. And then, of course, one Raikou. A lot of lists play 2. This one plays 1, kind of in favor of that second copy of Raichu. It's an interesting Miraidon list, though. It is definitely interesting. We do see a Makani Tran with the Giratina, the Arceus Regigigas V-Star deck. So Makani and the Kitchen did play this deck, and actually Makani did play this deck to San Antonio. So Makani ran it back once again with the deck. I think it's a pretty similar 60. I think the only difference is Makani cut the Avery that he played in favor of a Judge, which I think was a really good card to add to the deck. But I'm pretty sure everybody who played this deck to the last regional, San Antonio, played it again. Like I know Nathan Stratford played it again too. So definitely interesting to see the deck actually get a top 8. I really like Arc Piles, and I'm always happy to see Arc Piles do well. This Regigigas build is definitely an interesting version of it. I guess if you don't know what the Regigigas does, it does of course have that Giga Impact attack that can do 230. It's just a really strong beat stick attacker. 230 is the magic number in a lot of matchups. Gigas is also insanely tanky. It's also workable with Charon's Care, which is another thing that can make it good. Definitely a really cool list. I've tried the deck myself at locals. I did lose to a Rapid Strike, and I lost something else. I can't remember. But yeah, I lost to Tina, which is another bad matchup. But I don't know. I like Arc Piles. I mean, that's the one thing that does scare me about playing the deck, though, is I don't want to take a really bad loss to something like Rapid Strike or to Giratina. Giratina especially. Now that Giratina is popular, it's a little scary to maybe play Arc, but Arc doesn't seem terrible right now. And this Arc Gigas deck looks really cool, and I am happy to see it have a good performance here in top 8. We see Azul once again getting top 8 with Charizard. Pretty similar 60 to his San Antonio list with a few differences. The first difference is he did add a Switch into the deck, which probably is just there for stuff like Koko, stuff for Snorlax, and then obviously there is that one of TM Devolution. Very interesting tech card, cutting the Justified Gloves for the TM Devo. But either way, it's cool to see Azul get top 8 again with a Charizard deck. The highest performing Charizard deck here in Portland. We had Ian Robb in top 8 with the Mew. This one was the double turbo Mew deck with the Fusion Energy. So that's really interesting to see. 2 Mews in top 8. Again, a deck that I would not have really expected to do well this tournament, but Mew had a good performance, and I guess never deny the power of Mew. There were 2 in top 8. So definitely really cool to see the Mew deck here do well. So I don't know, maybe Mew is a better call than I thought. Well, there was a Charizard at 9th place, so of course Charizard, well, there's 1 in top 8. I said the deck wasn't going to win the tournament, but it did get top 8 still, and we did see one outside of top 8 here at 9th. This one, it looks pretty similar to Azul's 60. There is a couple of key changes. I guess there is a split of the Pidgeys. There's a Colress, there's a Turo in the deck, and there's a Jammer, a Gloves, and a Vitality Band. So there's a lot of tools in the deck. But it is a very streamlined Zard at 60 still. And then, of course, we do have Tina. Of course, a lot of Tina doing well this tournament. There was one here in top 16, a bubble out of top 8. So you got to consider most of these decks, like outside of the top 8, all bubbled. And Daniel Hugar did bubble with the Tina deck once again. But it is pretty similar to what we saw. There is an Iono in the deck. John Ang and Sam didn't play the Iono in their list, but Dan did. And then, of course, there was a Sablezard deck outside of top 8, too. I'm still a big fan of this deck. I don't think Sablezard is a very powerful deck right now. I think that it's got good matchups. The worst matchups are probably going to be maybe Gardevoir, and then, of course, maybe your Rapid Strike matchup is pretty unwinnable. But Sablezard's still very strong. Actually, it's got a really good Giratina matchup, in my opinion. I think this deck beats Giratina, and I think that's one of the reasons why we saw Sablezard do so well is because its Tina matchup is pretty darn good. And maybe, that can kind of contribute to the deck's performance. And I'm a huge fan of the deck. Once again, I'm a huge fan. And we have a wave of Mew here outside. Once again, we see Mew in, the top 16. I think it's the same 60 as Ian. We saw Vance Kelly with the deck, the world champion. Then we got another Mew in top 16. And then we got another Mew, and this one's a Fusion Mew. So yeah, Fusion Mew had a really, or Mew in general, just had a really good performance this weekend. Again, it's kind of crazy to see Mew do so well, because again, I kind of counted the deck out for this tournament, but apparently it was still a good call. And of course, we do have the Rapid Strike in top 16. Rapid Strike underperformed slightly to what I would have thought it would have done. I thought maybe a Rapid Strike could have got top 8. But we do see one here still in the top 16. And then another Mew in top 16. So Mew just kind of dominated this tournament. Not going to lie, Mew had a really good performance. I think it had the biggest breakthrough performance I would have expected, because I didn't think Mew was going to be that great for Portland. I was like, Mew's probably not a great play for the tournament. Charizard just won a major tournament. I wouldn't play Mew. But Mew ended up doing really well. It was the most played deck in the top 16. So that's really interesting to see. We got a Guardy outside of top 16 here. This Guardy is playing a TM at Devolution. Not the worst tech you could have for the Charizard matchup, I guess. Especially when you have Cresselia and maybe Screamtail, which can kind of help you out. And then, of course, a couple more Tinas here in top 32. We got a couple of these to look at. Yeah, we got 2 Tinas. Again, most Tina 60s are very similar. This one does play a Lost Vacuum in it, though. We do see Hale run it back with a very cool Snorlax control deck. So it's the Pidgeot Snorlax deck with a couple of spicy inclusions. So the first one you'll notice is Radiant Charizard, which is a pretty weird card to see in a Snorlax deck. I'm pretty sure the idea behind the Charizard was to counter the counters. Like, it was really good against Giratina. Apparently that's what the Charizard was for. It was for the Giratina matchup. There's also a Shiyu EX in the deck, which is another very weird card to see. But Shiyu's it's a cool card. It's got the attack Flame Surge that does 100 damage, and then you can choose up to 3 of your bench Pokemon, put a Fire Energy on them, and then you have Jealousy Singe, which mills the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Pretty certain that first attack is the reason why you're playing the Shiyu in the deck, but it is cool to see. The Shiyu card is kind of sick. So like I said, man, there were some pretty wacky cards in day 2. And let me tell you, there's a couple of more cards you weren't expecting to see in day 2, and Shiyu EX was one of them. I did not have Shiyu EX on my bingo card, but it is a pretty good card. It can be good in the mirror. It's another card to mill. It's kind of like playing the Crabominable V in the Snorlax deck. You know, some of those Snorlax control decks play that one of Crabominable, and that's kind of the main thing you'll have with the Shiyu. Really spicy 60. I think Hale said that he didn't like the Charizard, so he wouldn't have bothered playing it. Pretty sure I saw it on Twitter. But it's really cool to see Hale with the Pidgeot deck playing some pretty spicy stuff like that Shiyu and the Charizard. Got another Lost Tina here in top 32. There's a Roy Moon. Roy Moon's definitely on the bubble right now. Like I said, it's kind of on the bubble of being a pretty good deck. We haven't seen it with its breakthrough top 8 performance yet, outside of being in a Lost Zone deck, but the straight, kind of more sought as Vitality Turbo build has been, getting a lot of attention. And this one, once again, run it back with the Town Stores. No Pokestops in the deck here, playing of the Water Energy too. We got an Arc Superior pile deck here in top 32. Now, this was a pretty interesting build. The double Superior being really good against Charizard. Obviously, Superior V-Star can one-shot Charizard. Now, instead of playing Giratina V-Star, which is usually what you'll see combined with Superior, this build's actually playing a Slacking V, which is just a really strong, heavy hitter. It works with Path and Spiritomb. It's not really as good as Giratina. Giratina can do more damage, but Slacking can also hit really hard. It kind of does what Giratina kind of does sometimes. Like, you're able to knock out your basic Vs and EXs with Slacking in one hit. You have 230 HP. You're fairly bulky. You synergize with Spiritomb and stuff. You can put a belt on it and do 290 damage if you want, if you don't have like a double turbo on the Slacking. So not the worst card you could play right now. But yeah, really cool Arc pile. Arc Superior is a really cool deck. Really good against Charizard, obviously. Like, you have Path, Judge, and Superior. There was a Shempao deck here in top 32, Jared Grimes with the Shempao. Jared is a Shempao, a bot, and I will say that Shempao definitely still felt like a decent play for this tourney. And this build not playing the Iron Hands, actually going back to the OG build of playing the Cross Switcher Cologne package in the deck instead of playing the Iron Hands, which makes sense. I mean, Iron Hands isn't bad in Shempao, but sometimes just the Canceling Clone Cross Switcher combo can get you over the edge too, and it does make sense to see the deck have another good run. We see another Guardy here in top 32. This one having the Luxurious Cape and no Avery in the deck. There's another Snorlax. Pretty traditional list here, Snorlax Stall. Pretty straightforward list here, played by Cal. We see another Giratina. Once again, Giratina, just very similar 60s. We're going to try to skim through some of those. We got another Charizard deck here. This one looking like, similar to Azul 60 with that TM Devolution once again in the deck, but also playing the Justified Gloves in the deck too. So I guess TM Devo is like a decent play. We got a couple Lost Zone decks. We see a Lost Box Kyogre deck, very similar to what we saw in Kyoto, it looks like, with the hands, the moon, There's a Raikou V in the deck. There is a Mimikyu in the deck, which is interesting. That isn't terrible against Charizard, which, ironically enough, is a bad matchup for Lost Zone Kyogre. I feel like Zard can be tough. I did a video on my main channel where I played a Kyogre Regidrago Lost Zone deck, and I played a Koko EX specifically to counter Charizard, but it does seem that Charizard is still tough. This deck actually still needs to tech for it. It still plays a TM Devolution and a Mimikyu in the deck to really try to make the Zard matchup more winnable, which honestly I kind of respect. But really cool 60 here, and definitely cool to see these Lost Box decks do well. I've kind of honestly, over the past little bit, I've been gaining a respect for Lost Box decks, and we see a Lost Zone Giratina Tord deck. That's the Tord deck. I don't know why I was saying Lost. I saw the Giratina. I'm like, oh, it's Tina, but no, it's the Tord. It's the Tord pile. It's basically Tord's Tina deck with like the Kyogre and stuff that he played. To the turn, I forget what it was. Stuttgart. It might have been Stuttgart. I think it was Stuttgart. But yeah, really cool to see the Tord pile still being innovated here. There's another Miraidon here. It looks like it is the Peony Miraidon Turbo build with the 16 Lightning. But once again, playing that Tapu Koko EX, again, pretty good against Charizard this weekend, whether or not they're playing Switch. There's another Zard here, of course. This one piloted by Professor Poke playing the Zard. Congrats to him on the run. And we do see the Zard 60 here. Very similar to Azul's list from San Antonio. No switching cards in the deck whatsoever. And there was a Roaring Moon here in the tournament, played by Ross Cawthon, which is interesting because Ross obviously is a very big rogue player. And this one does, kind of stray away from the usual Moon Turbo list. It is playing the Pokestops. It's playing Emergency Jelly, which is a very interesting card to play with Moon because you use Frenzy Gouging. You can actually combine that with Emergency Jelly. There's also a couple of Iono in the deck too, and there's researches. So there's a lot of draw cards within this deck, which is very, very interesting. Yeah, cool stuff. Then we got Grant Manley once again on the Zard. Pretty much same 60 as Azul. Playing 6 fires, I think, was kind of the big deal in the deck, as opposed to 7 fire, which I think Grant tweeted that he would have liked to have had, the 7 fires. And then we got a Rapid Strike deck here, piloted by Riley, with basically run it back with the Rapid Strike deck. Again, Rapid Strike not having the best performance as I would have thought it would, considering Tina is like a good matchup, and there's a lot of Tina doing well, because we got another Tina here, and we got another Zard. Ooh, going back to the Bibzard package with the TM Evolution. Playing one of that one of TM Devo 2. Also playing the Entei V in the deck, which is a card you don't usually see in Charizard anymore. But I guess Entei can sometimes make a difference in the deck. So it kind of makes sense to play it, I guess. We got another Guardy here, an Avery-less Gardevoir deck. And we got another Miraidon here. This one is the Iono build. Not playing any judges, though. It's the Iono research build, no judges. Playing the Path of the Peaks, though. Also playing one of Justified Gloves to help against Zard and Moon, I guess, which is interesting. Probably mostly for Moon, or Zard, obviously. But still, you can use it against Moon. You never know. Got another Grabber Mew DT deck here. Again, Mew having a pretty good performance this weekend overall, I would say. We got another Roaring Moon. This one is a turbo build. It looks like it's similar to what Ross was playing. Kind of-ish. Actually, not really. I lied. I saw the Jelly, and I'm like, oh, it's like Ross's deck. It's not really like Ross's deck. It's got a couple cards, like the Jelly. We do see the Sadas. Catchers in the deck, so playing Pokemon Catcher, really trying to just capitalize on that turn 1 attack pressure that you can have with this deck. So playing those Catchers, having that Minior in the deck to help a little bit against Snorlax, which makes sense. Playing 5 stadiums. The Pokestop Town Store split, because you do play Jelly and Capsule and Forest Steel Stone. I think the big takeaway is obviously the 4 of Pokemon Catcher, which isn't a terrible card to play in the deck, because a lot of the time Roaring Moon can't use Gust. Like, sometimes they'll play Cross Switcher, but not all the time, right? We got another Tina, and then we got another Tina. A lot of Tina. Like I said, Tina was pretty good this weekend. This one had an Avery in it. We got another Meloetta Mew. Playing that one of TM Devo. Also playing a Town Store over Lost City. It's also pretty interesting to see. And of course, we got a Entei Valiant deck here. Once again, Entei Valiant being a pretty kind of underdog deck. This build is a little different, though. It's got a couple of different cards. We see the Spiritomb in the deck, something that you usually don't see in Entei anymore. And then, of course, there is a Moltres in the deck, a really good 1-prize attacker that can put on a little bit of pressure for 1 energy. This deck only plays 2 Entei V, so as opposed to 4 Entei or 3 Entei, which is what you usually see in the Entei Valiant. This build opted to play 2. There is a Super Rod in the deck, though, to help get them back. And then, of course, the Radiant Charizard is also in the deck, and the Medicham. So a really cool Entei Valiant 60 here. There's a Goldengo. So in my predictions video, I said that Goldengo hadn't gotten a day 2 yet at a regional. But now that the Goldengo Palkia deck that from Kyoto got it, got a name for itself, we are probably going to see Goldengo in day 2. And I predicted it, and I was accurate. Goldengo finally got itself a day 2 at a regional, piloted by Paul here with the Palkia Goldengo deck. Looks pretty similar to what we saw in the Champions League in Kyoto. There was a couple Zinnia in the deck. I don't think that build played it, but this is really cool. Palkia Goldengo, really 660. And it's awesome to see the deck do that. It did get day 2. It got 46 plays. Actually had a pretty decent performance, so that's awesome to see. I think there was a couple Goldengo in day 2, if I remember correctly. I guess we'll find out. We got another Tina here, and then, of course, we got a Zard. Once again, this one, pretty much the Azul Zard playing the TM Devolution in the deck, too. We see a Glasses Lost Box deck here. Kind of seems like the best way to play right now, I feel like. I don't know. It just seems like the Glasses Lost Box deck is like the most played version of these Lost Box decks right now. I mean, I know we saw earlier, we saw like the Torch 60, we saw the Sablezard deck and stuff. But now we're seeing the Glasses build of Lost Box kind of still have a pretty good run. So yeah, definitely good. And I mean, it's not bad at all. I don't know if its Tina matchup is very good. That's like the one thing. I mean, I guess it has a Mew EX, which probably makes Tina a little bit more winnable. But there's no Sableye. I don't know. Would this deck be good against Tina? I guess it would. I mean, you have hands Mew and Moon, which is probably all you need. In that matchup. Another Lost Phone Kyogre deck here. It is a Dragonite Moon Iron Hands build playing that Kyogre, but also playing the Ditto, playing the Pokestops, the Counter Catchers, yeah, stuff like that. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Like I said, Dragonite's always kind of been on the rise in terms of how good it can be right now. We do see a Rowan with the Guardy here once again. Yeah, Guardy with no Avery, the Averyless Guardy list. And then we see another Snorlax. This one has a couple spicy cards playing Regieleki in the deck to get items back. And then you have that Indeedee or the... Why do I... It's not the Indeedee. Was there ever an Indeedee? There was an Indeedee. No, Indeedee, that is 10 damage for each card in your hand. So if you just have a humongous hand, which a lot of the time you will with Snorlax, right? That's kind of the point of the deck. You can do like 1 billion damage with Indeedee as an attack. Another Tina, once again. I'm just going to kind of skim through most of the Tinas. Because, I mean, once again, the 60s are very similar. Pretty standard Snorlax here, too. With the Crab. A couple more Guardies here. We see another Averyless Guardy. There's another Guardy here with 1 Avery in the deck this time. So there you go. We got another Tina. Like I said, Tina, very good deck for this tournament. Hey, it won the regional, man. We got another Peony Miraidon deck here, which is interesting. We do see it does play the Coco, like I said. It's also got a Town Store in the deck alongside EXP Share, Bravery Charm, and 4 Seal Stones. That's an interesting little 60 here. But yeah, Peony Miraidon still seeming to be pretty good. Not the highest placing Miraidon deck this time, but still getting decent placements in day 2 regardless, right? So, yeah, there's a Tina. We are going to see another Arc Pile here. It's, again, piloted by Joe, which, again, Makani and all the members of the kitchen basically just played the same 60 here with the Arc Regigigas deck. Pretty similar. Yeah, it's the same 60 as Makani's list, right? So, cool stuff to see. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna lie though, this Arc Gigas deck for like how good it did this weekend and how like good it is, I think that it didn't really get to show it off on stream. I think both stream games we saw the Arc Gigas deck, it got completely bodied by horrible bricks. Like I literally think both games that were streamed, both Makani and Joe just had awful draws. Which sucks, because like the deck actually is pretty good against like Mew, especially. I think this deck is really good against Mew. I think it's like pretty favored for you against Mew, but we saw Makani just didn't have very good draws. Neither did Joe. Crazy. We got another Tina once again in day 2. A lot of Tina in day 2. Ran the show. Another Zard here with double TM Devo and a Judge. That's interesting. Judge and Zard's an interesting inclusion. A couple of Tinas back to back here. Can look through those real quick. I guess we'll see if there's any spicy Tinas. And as I say that, there is indeed a spicy Tina. This one is playing it Shaman and Iron Hands in the deck. Not usually something you see in Tina. The Shaman's like, it's been used before. The Hands too, but together is interesting. It's more of like a tool-y box deck because there are different attackers within the deck. Sacrificing the Water Energy though for the Light Energy though for the Hands. Another Mew here. Another Mew. And then there's another Glasses Lost Box deck here in day 2. Again, this deck seems like it's pretty good, man. I mean, we're seeing it have like consistent placements, so I don't know. Is Glasses Lost Box the best way to play the Lost Box deck? More Tina action. Another Zard, piloted by Mellow Magikarp. Then there's another Guardy. Averyless Guardy. Interesting that we're seeing a lot more Averyless Guardy, because that was like a pretty big staple in the deck, but now we're seeing a lot of these Guardy lists in this tournament not play Avery. Interesting stuff to see. Another Tina. Another Zard. This one is basically like Azul's list from San Antonio, except just playing Avery, no research, just playing TM Devo and a Minior in the deck for the control matchup. We got another Shempao in day 2. This one is a Iron Hand Shempao. There's a couple interesting cards in the deck. There's a Luminion, there's a Roxanne, there's a couple of research, and there's 2 Path of the Peak. So it's not really relying on that like Pokestop turbo engine. Instead, it's playing a little bit of a heavier draw count, which is definitely an interesting way to play the Shempao deck for sure. And I guess that isn't terrible. Research isn't a bad card to play in my opinion. Roxanne's interesting though. And then the Path. Path is definitely the biggest interesting card because you can't do Shivery Chill. I don't know. That's yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting card to play in the deck for sure. A couple more Tinas to look at here, and there is another Rapid Strike again. Not having the performance that I thought it would have. Crazy times we're living in. More Tina. This one does play Cross Switcher. That's a card that some Tina lists when Tina was first getting cracked around NEIC. That's when like the Tina Cross Switcher deck was popular. So that's interesting. And we just looked at that. Another Glasses Lost Box deck. Yep, another super effective Glasses Lost Zone build. Not playing Mew EX though, so probably taking a bit of a worse matchup into Giratina V-Star, especially since it was popular. More Fusion Mew action. And then there was another Miraidon here playing the Path once again, and the Judges. 3 Path of Peak, 13 Energy, no Coco EX, big deal there. No Coco in that list. There was another Roaring Moon deck. We do see the Roaring Moon Iron Hands build. This one's been getting a little bit of groundswell and hype recently, and it is interesting to see the Iron Hands. Definitely isn't a bad card to play in the deck. You can use it with Thornton. You can also use it with Energy Switch because you play so many, Energy Acceleration cards and Turbo cards. It's not very hard to build up an Iron Hands in a single turn within this deck. I mean, 4 energy is a lot, but sometimes you can pull that off in a single turn or even over the course of a couple turns. So definitely a really cool build of Roaring Moon with the hands. Does the hands fix the matchups for Moon? Who knows? But yeah, it did get day 2, so there you go. Another Shempao deck here. Again, a lot more Shempao in day 2 than I think a lot of people would have given it credit for. I thought it was an okay play for the tourney. I thought we were going to see Shempao rebound a little bit. There was one in top 32, so it did get there. Now, here's where things get interesting. There was a Greedent VMAX in day 2 here. Crazy times. This is a very awesome list. It is a Palkia V-Star Iron Valiant deck, sort of. There's a lot of attackers in the deck. We see Suicune, we see Crabominable, we see Rotoms in the deck for some draw. There's also the 2/2 Greedent. So the idea of the deck is against like Lost Box, you can, Tachyon Bits the Comfies, and then you can knock them out with Greedent VMAX's Turn of Profit attack, which lets you take an extra 2 prizes when you KO a basic Pokemon. So if this thing knocks out a Comfey, you're taking 3 prize cards. You can even knock out like Roaring Moons and stuff that do Frenzied Gouging and take 4 prizes. So you can make some very crazy plays. I definitely want to try this deck out, no cap. Like, this is a cool deck. I got a lot of Iron Valiant decks already made right now, not going to lie. There's a lot of decks you can make with Iron Valiant. It's just that versatile of a card. And this is a very cool way to play it with Greedent VMAX. You can build it up with Melanie. This deck does play 4 copies of Melanie, which is a pretty good way to power up Greedent VMAX. Definitely a really cool 60. Even the Crabominable is a sick idea, because Crabominable also synergizes nicely with Iron Valiant. I've had a few people comment the idea of playing Crabominable before in Valiant, because it's a Destroyer Punch attack, can blow anything up in the active spot when you combine it with a couple of Tachyon Bits. That's a very sick 60. We got another interesting Lost Zone deck. Here is the Lost Zone Dragonite Paradox package, playing a one of Articuno. And the Articuno definitely would help a lot against Charizard, which again I think was a very big deal this weekend. Got some Guardies. This one does play Avery. And then another Guardie here. This one not playing the Avery. And then there was another Tina. And of course below that we had another Rapid Strike. And then there was a Cloth here. We did see this Cloth deck on stream, which was interesting. Cloth definitely isn't a bad deck right now. With Miraidon and Zard being popular, it's not bad. I mean, I guess your worst matchup is going to be Guardie. Mew's probably not great either. I know there's a Spiritomb, but Mew can still be tough. And I wonder if Tina's winnable. I mean, there's no Jirachi. I don't know if Tina's a great matchup, but it is cool to see the Cloth deck still get day 2. It's just a deck that's always going to be around day 2, in my opinion, no matter what. Another Guardie. We got another Miraidon here, playing at the Peony 17 Lightning. Not playing Double Turbo, but I was once again playing that one of Tapu Koko EX in deck for the addition of the Paralysis, which I think is really good. So 6 stuff there. We got another Lost Zone deck here. Once again, playing the Super Fitted Glasses, but there's a lot more spice. There is some stones in the deck. We got Sky Seal and Forest Seal Stone. Crazy that nobody really plays Sky Seal Stone anymore, considering it's still not the worst card you could run. And I guess like V-Stars and VMAX aren't that popular, but Sky Seal Stone's cool. Of course, you can put on that Moltres or Raikou, take potentially 3 to 4 prizes when you take a knockout. It's definitely a pretty big card to still play with in the deck. More Charizard here. Looking like it's just like the Azul 60 from San Antonio. We got Tina. with a Roaring Moon. Look at that, Tina Moon. And then we got the Miraidon deck here. Not the turbo build with the Peony, just going back to the Judges and the Ionos and stuff. And there's a Sablezard here with the one of a Roaring Moon in the deck. So there you go. We got the Sablezard Roaring Moon deck. The Roaring Moon is pretty good with the Charizard. The only difference of this build, you're not seeing the TM Devolution, right? So that's like the thing. You see the Sablezard deck with the TM Devos, and then you see the ones with the Moon. But if you're playing the Moon, you're a lot of the time not playing the TM Devolution for the Zard matchup, right? So speaking of Zard, there was a Zard below it, and there was another Tina here. And it looks like we saw, yeah, there it is, a second Goldengo in day 2. I knew it. There's another Goldengo. This one also looks pretty similar to what we saw from the Champions League Kyoto. Actually, this one's a lot more similar than the one we looked at, because this one does play a Milotic, which the other build did, and the one from Champions League, it did play the Milotic. Really cool to see. Goldengo getting its first ever day 2 with a couple of decent placements. Awesome to see. My prediction paid off. And yeah, Goldengo's not a bad deck. I think it's a pretty fun deck to play. Is it super duper great, top tier? Probably not, but it is a really cool and fun deck, and it can definitely cheese out wins here and there for sure. I gotta imagine like its Zard and Mew matchups aren't bad, and there was a few of those in day 2. Got a Zard and a Guardy here. There's a couple of Arc decks back to back. We see that Arc Gigas deck once again, and then we got another Arc Tina. Now this is where things get crazy. Arc Tina with a 1/1 Venusaur VMAX. Venusaur VMAX, I'm pretty sure, has never made day 2 of regionals before. But that is about to change with Portland here. This Venusaur VMAX is really, really cool to see. Now, the idea behind the card is it's a grass Pokemon that can hit Charizard with weakness. I'm pretty sure that's the idea of it. It does have the attack G-Max Bloom, which does 210 damage with a 2 grass and a double turbo, which is, I think, how you want to build up the Venusaur VMAX in the deck. It also, I think the other big thing is it does have that 330 HP. So when you're playing against Charizard, if you're playing Superior, if you have to knock something out with Arceus to build up Superior, a lot of the time you only get to kill one Charizard, right? Because by the time that Superior takes a knock on the Charizard's doing 270 to the Superior and knocking it out. So a lot of the time, you can only take out one Zard with Superior, unless you don't take a prize to power it up. Because you have to go Arc Knockout, build a Superior, Superior KO Zard, then Zard KO Superior. Venusaur can actually take down 2 Zards. As long as Venusaur does not get bossed first or anything, it can knock out 2 Charizards, right? Because you can go hit the Charizard, you go knock out Arceus, knock out Charizard Venusaur, knock out another Charizard Venusaur, and then you still have to take your last prize to win the game. Really cool to see that. Is it the best grass VMAX to play with Arceus? Is it better than Leafeon? I don't know. I think it's a really cool card, though, and it is awesome to see this Venusaur VMAX in day 2. Like I said, there were some pretty crazy cards in day 2, like Greedent, Chi-Yu, and Venusaur VMAX, and that was one of the big ones I was hyped to see. Got Zard, another Lost Zone deck here. We see the Tord pile once again. There is a Luminous Energy in the deck. That's an interesting inclusion to play in the deck. But yeah, just a Tord pile here again with the Tina. And we do also see more Charizard here. And then there's a Palkia in day 2. Like I said, Palkia definitely seems like a pretty decent deck right now. This one does have a couple of interesting techs. It is playing a Mawile, which isn't bad against Charizard. Or basically Charizard, especially if they were net decking the San Antonio list, right? We're not seeing them play the switches, and Mawile beats Zard. If they just bench Manaphy against you, or if they bench, Rotom, you can just trap it with Mawile and win the game that way. So that's basically what it's for. And there's the Pidgeot in the deck, so you can infinite loop the Mawile. That's essentially the idea of the Mawile in the deck, and I definitely don't hate it. And then we see Tina with an Avery, a couple of Zards here. And a lot of the Zards weren't playing Switch, right? That's pretty much where that Mawile can capitalize on it. When the Zard doesn't play Switch, Mawile is just really good. There is another Snorlax deck. Once again, Snorlax, decent play for the tourney. Not as much as I would have expected, but I mean, I guess people just don't want to play that deck, which makes sense. Another Peony deck, not playing the Coco EX, but this one does play 4 catchers. Oh yeah, it's least heckly. We do see the 4 catchers here. Very aggressive build of Miraidon. Peony can also grab your Pokemon catcher, so not only can you grab Generator, but you can grab Catcher. Catcher is obviously a coin flip card, but if it pays off, you can get some pretty big donks. I think Lee said he would have liked to have played 2 Switch, 1 Rope, because Rope is kind of awkward with Pokemon catcher, so I think that was a big deal. Another Roaring Moon here in day 2. Looks like it's another Roaring Moon with Iron Hands. Another Rapid Strike. And then we got another Roaring Moon here. This one not playing the hands, playing the town stores. It is playing Water Energy still, though. And then there's another Charizard, once again, with the Turo. Another Tina. Yeah, we'll just kind of skim through some of these decks real quick, because they might all just kind of look the same, right? We got more Zard with the TM Devo. Another Roaring Moon here in day 2. This one is like the one from Champions League Kyoto. It is playing at that Darkrai V-Star and the 4 cross receivers, which is something that we were seeing from the Champions League. So it is cool to see the deck actually get a day 2 placement regardless after its run in the Champions League. So that's cool to see. You got Tina, got Rapid Strike. We do see an Urshifu Iron Valiant, so 2 back-to-back Urshifu decks here in the tournament. This one is the Urshi Valiant deck, very similar also to the Kyoto Champions League one. Does play a lot of draw supporters, but is also playing some interesting inclusions. There's a one of Klefki in the deck, which I imagine is good in like mirror matches and matchups where you can shut off Rotom, you can shut off Mew, you can shut off Squawkabilly, shut off Radiant Greninja, shut off Comfey, while you kind of slowly build up your board. And that does make sense. Also, you can go into Klefki when you use Strafe. I think that's one of the big deals with the Klefki, is you can strafe into it as like a mini hit and run package, which is cool to see. And there's the Drapion in the deck. Obviously, you want to respect Mew, which this deck really struggles against. And Mew is popular this tournament. So another Palkia here in day 2. Palkia Ice Rider is playing the Articuno. No Mawilds or anything. Articuno's there to try to help against Charizard. And then there's the Entei Valiant once again, playing the 3 Entei. Not like the other build we saw, but a couple of Entei Valiants in day 2, and nonetheless, another Fusion Mew, playing the Deoxys in the deck, and the IceQ, and the Meloetta. And then there's another Zard, obviously, with a Turo. So Zard was playing a more Switch this weekend than I thought. Interesting. Another Mew, another Roaring Moon with the Darkrai. Another build that looks pretty similar to the Champions League Kyoto list with the Darkrai and the cross receivers and the cross switchers. Look at that. Another Tina. There's a Snorlax Pidgeot deck once again. So similar to what we saw in San Antonio. Not like the build we saw earlier with all the crazy fire attacks, but this one is a bit more streamlined like the one from San Antonio. And then there's another Sablezard here in day 2. Not playing the Roaring Moon, just playing the TM Devolutions and stuff to keep it a little bit more simplistic. Got Tina, and then we got Guardy. Yay, Guardy with Avery. Yeah, there it is. Boom. And we're just going to skim through these decks. Got another Cloth in day 2 here with a TM Devo and Jirachi and stuff. Deck for the Tina, another Mew, a couple more Guardies. We can quickly skim through these. No Avery. There's an Avery in this Guardy list, though. We got another Mew. And then, ooh, there's another Goldango. Look at that. All right, we got another Zard. Yep, there it is, Zard. There's another Tina. And yeah, there it is, baby. Another Goldango. 3 Goldango in day 2. This one is playing a Toedscruel EX. So a card that I haven't really seen in a while in a tournament. I mean, we saw a bit of Toedscruel action, I think at LEIC, because that's when like Roaring Moon got a lot of hype and stuff. But it is interesting. Obviously, the Toedscruel can help against Tina and Moon. So that's interesting. Cool stuff, cool stuff. I guess Toedscruel's not bad. I get into like the Lost Zone decks. There's no Palkia, no Water Energies, just all in on at the metal. So 3 Goldango in day 2. And this Goldango is not like the one that is very popular with the Palkia. That's cool to see. It's its own creation. That's awesome. That makes me happy. That proves Goldango has the chances to do it by itself, right? Without needing the support of the things. Got another Iron Hands Roaring Moon combo deck here with a Roxanne. 3 Town Stores. Not playing Pokestop. Interesting. There's another Tina, and then Zard. We got 2 more decks to look at here. We got another, looks like another Glasses Lost Zone deck. Yep, there it is, the Glasses Lost Box deck. And to round things out, there's another Charizard here in day 2 with double Avery. So there you go, and there you have, folks. That is it for all the day 2 decks in Portland. Again, some pretty cool stuff we saw. Some very interesting cards in day 2. The Venusaur VMAX was awesome. Hail with that Pidgeot Snorlax deck with the Spice, the Shiyu EX. There's a Greedent VMAX Iron Valiant deck in day 2. Just some wild stuff in day 2, and I'm happy to see it. And yeah, that's definitely interesting. The big takeaway is obviously Mew and Tina, pretty good decks right now. Charizard, I think, is still going to be very good. Like I said, after this tournament, I don't think Charizard was going to be the best deck in the format. I don't think our Charizard is the best deck. I think, honestly, we can all say Giratina is probably the best deck right now. I think we're at that point after this tournament where Giratina can be officially named the best deck. But Arcpal's holding on. Arcpal's getting top 8 here in 2024. Crazy stuff. And that'll be it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video here. Again, I'll leave a link down below to Limitless if you want to go check out the tournament results yourself. That'll be it for me. Have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye.